Welcome back to Retro Collect 101. And for those that haven't seen, I'll put a link in the video on the top somewhere above my head. In yesterday's video, I spoke about why you would be interested or maybe interested to get into retro gaming in particular, and specifically then retro collecting. And today, I figured I would take that on a step. We'll say that you are interested, I want to try, but how do I actually go about setting myself up with a retro system, and how should I basically start? Simple as that. Not always as easy as you might think, because, well, there's a world of possibilities out there. And there's a myriad ways to do it. And by no means what I'm going to say now is correct, or the definitive answer. It's merely more a case of how I did it, and a few of the things I learned along the way. So, one thing above all is that if you are unsure about how much you're into retro gaming and retro collecting, you should set yourself some sort of goals and objectives to begin with. Now, for a start, that might mean, well, I hear a lot about retro games. Maybe you watch the Angry Video Game Nerd, or maybe you've read a few issues of Retro Gamer, and you've seen about these classics talked about, and you might have some fond memories from your childhood too. And you said, you know what, I'll get into that. The biggest downfall for collectors or collecting is people who don't set themselves up with a plan and what they're going to do, and sort of buy loads of random stuff and end up not really enjoying it, and then end up selling it all off and kind of forgetting about it. If you get off on the right foot, so to speak, I think you'll enjoy the whole collecting process a lot more. If you're unsure about how much you want to collect or what you want to collect, I'd recommend trying either emulation, digital downloads, or perhaps best of all, nice compilation packs as a means to test the waters. So, I'm going to keep it Sega themed because I'm surrounded by Sega at the moment. Well, no, Nintendo I suppose on this side, and a bit of Sony, but it's often Sega, so I'll talk about it from a Sega perspective. But it applies across the board. On the Xbox and the PlayStation 3, you have the, what did they call it? The Sonic's Ultimate Mega Drive Collection in America. No, sorry, Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection in America, and the Ultimate Mega Drive Collection over here. And that's a collection of 40 odd Mega Drive games, a few arcade games, and Master System games. And it's a great way to try out some 8-bit, 16-bit, or whatever, gaming. And if you find you start to enjoy them, well, then I would say, take it a step further. Go on, try and, pick up maybe a Mega Drive and see what, do you like the experience of the real hardware, and having to put in a cartridge, maybe having to bone a cartridge to get it to work, and just, take it slow to begin with. Another point on that matter is that if you decide that you do want to, say, pick up a real system, you should set a goal as to what you are going to buy for it, or what systems. It applies to systems too. What systems are you going to buy? Your goal could be something as simple as, well, I'm going to buy the games that I had when I was younger but I sold off. Or I'm going to buy systems I had when I was younger and sold off, that type of thing. It may even be a case that you're a fan of a certain genre of games. So you might say, well, look, I love platformers. I remember I had Sonic and I loved it, so I want to buy platformers. That's a great way to start out. Start off with those things. Similarly, RPGs. I think Shenmue actually does something like that, where he buys RPGs because that's what he's into. Now, you can, of course, deviate, and that's only natural. In fact, it makes for a very healthy collection, and it's good to try new things. So even if you say, I'm going to collect the games I had when I was younger, well, you probably only had a small set of the overall collection, and in, say, the Master System set, there's 268 games released in Europe, excluding cards, however you want to count them. I had less than 20. So basically, I had less than 10%. Why would I then ignore 90% of the library? But it's good for me to start with what I knew. Now, as it turns out, I didn't sell any of my games, so I still have them. But from time to time, test the waters. But do so in a kind of a fairly controlled manner. I wouldn't go, buying loads and loads and loads of things necessarily. You could find yourself spending a lot of money very fast and not really enjoying it. That goes doubly, I think, for those considering a full set collection. Full set collecting is kind of like one of the more hardcore ways to collect. The name is fairly apparent, but in case you don't know, it's where you decide that you're going to buy a complete set of something. So, be it a complete set of PAL games, a complete set of worldwide games for a system, or even just a complete set of genre games. Whatever your definition for full set is, it's the complete works. And some people get tied up on what is complete or what is a full set. There's lots of collectors lists out there to help you along the way. Things like Retro Collect does a good job at trying to provide you a database. But at the end of the day, you will define your set for yourself. So my full set will undoubtedly be very different to other people's full set and so on. Now, if you do decide to go for a full set collection, I would just say be sure that's what you want to do. It is something that can cost a fair bit of money, especially if you aren't a patient person by nature. And there are things on eBay and that bin men and fakers that are really ruining the experience to a certain degree. I'll talk about that more tomorrow in the kind of eBay section, but it's something that should be factored in if you do decide to go down a full set route. And I would recommend not deciding I'm going to get this system and I'm going to get every game for it before you've even got the system. I would say take it one step at a time. Simple as it seems, but just see do you like the system and how much do you want to kind of continue to explore it. I would even go so far as to say if you don't have strong nostalgic memories for the system, I think you should be you should think twice about going for a full set basically for a system that doesn't have some sort of emotional connection to you in that way. You might find that when you get a system you love it so much that you just gotta have more games, and that's fair enough, but anyway, that's full set collecting. While I'm at it, if you were to go a little step further, just variant collecting. Now, if full set is fairly hardcore, variant collecting, that's extreme. You see people who have multiple copies of the exact same game, and for no good reason other than that the cover is very slightly different. I mean, on the Master System, there's covers that are identical, bar some of them would have Sega TM or Sega OR, and others wouldn't. Now, to go for a complete set of all those variants is monstrous. Potentially could never be achieved, I'd say, because there's always new variants coming up and people discovering things that weren't known before. But having said that, there are lots of nice variants out there, substantially different artwork, and part of collecting is experiencing things like the artwork and the manual, and you might want to actually have the different types to compare and contrast. So I do a bit of variant collecting myself, but again, it's something you might want to slowly go into. So you've decided you like retro games, you decided you're going to collect, and you said to yourself, I'm going to set myself a target. Well, I suppose naturally you should choose a system. For me, I chose the Sega Master System as my primary collection. At least for now. I will expand, and I buy other games, like there's Commodore stuff here and Sony and whatnot. But for now, my Master System set is my primary collection. And the reason for that is because it was my first true console. And I have very strong, emotional connection to it and to the games, and it kind of gives me the extra, impetus to go for a full set, which I wouldn't necessarily have for other systems, even those that I had when I was younger. Now there are other systems and there are other ones I will collect for, but that was how I chose my system. And I also knew that it was an achievable goal for full setting purposes because it's got a somewhat smallish library. It's, depending on how you count, we'll say 268, but anything up to 300 really. Um, that, in terms of full set collecting, is a reasonable number, I would say. Many systems, like say for example the PlayStation, you're talking 1,500 I think, maybe even more. That's just for the PAL set. So you might want to take that into consideration as well if you're going to go hardcore full set collecting. The Master System one is sizable. You feel you got a good meaty, challenging collection to get into, but at the same stage it's something I think a lot of people could do. Even if you look at say the Mega Drive, that's more than, maybe it's not more than, but it's about double the Master System, so it is a step up, and the SNES is even a bigger step up. So yeah, more things to take into consideration. Let me see, I've got a few notes, so that's why I'm looking down every so often. So you decided that you're going to set your goal and you've chosen your system and whatnot. Well, if you've decided on, say, like the Sega Master System or any system, you should look to join the communities surrounding them, because almost all systems, be it Atari with Atari Age, Nintendo with Nintendo Age, Sega with Sega 8-bit, and there's Sega 16 and so on. There's lots of communities around various systems and or companies or whatever, and you should definitely get involved. And it's a great way to find out more about the system that you decide to collect for, find out what the good games are, what you might be interested in, find stuff you want to avoid if you're not full setting, like some duffers that if you just want a good game collection, which is totally reasonable. In fact, it's probably the most sensible one to go for. You want to know if certain games look good but actually play crap, things like that. And most of all, these communities are friendly and you'll meet nice people, and as I said in part one, it brings a social element to the whole collecting scene. And same with here on YouTube. Get involved, post videos, show off your collection. That's one thing that I think a lot of collectors like to do. They like to show and they like to see other people's sets. It doesn't have to be large. Like, there's this kind of conception, I think, among some people that, well, my collection would have to have thousands of games for people to be interested to see it. And that's not true, because a lot of collectors are simply interested to see what others, in the same community are actually doing and buying, and what their experiences are. So that's another big point, is to just join communities. And kind of tied into that, ask questions. If you don't know, if you think that this could be a rare item, or if are you paying the right amount? That's another point about being in the community and being able to ask people, am I overpaying for my games? Is this a good deal or not? And people can often help you out, because at the end of the day, they're friendly and they want to. We don't want to be in a case where we're paying for common games hundreds of quid. That's just ridiculous. You want to be paying a fair price for these old games. And leading on to that, and price, is bundles. Now, not everyone is going to agree with this, but I think that a great way to start a collection is to buy a bundle. Not a crazy, massive, expensive one or anything like that, but just a nice size one to give you a few games that maybe you had already, and then maybe some you didn't have. So it's kind of what kind of really kicked off my Master System full set again, was when I got an eBay bundle, and I had a mixture, but largely new games. And I was trying out these new games again. I said, you know what? There's so many more games in the library that I want to try out. I want to, have a go at, and then have the physical media and the fun of collecting. That it kind of can reignite your interest, and it can also highlight just great games that you wouldn't have known otherwise. So yeah, I know some people, to be fair, do say that they don't like to buy bundles and they don't like to start with bundles because they want to kind of handpick the games that they're interested in. I can see why that would be a good alternative, especially for maybe something like a Nintendo collection. And there can be a lot of games that can be quite expensive and can push the price of bundles up. So you may just want to cherry pick ones that you know you're interested in. So it's that one is, I suppose, a point that you can kind of take it or leave it. Yeah, but that's basically it. That's how I would go about it. So set yourself some goals. What it is you're going to do, and take your time. Take it slowly in the beginning and just kind of test the waters to how interested you are. Choose a system or choose the games that you want to go after, and start to slowly get into them. Maybe you could get a bundle of those games, or maybe you could get a bundle with your system, or not, but choose how you want to go. At the end of the day, it's your collection, it's your choice, and it's your journey, I suppose. And then, last of all, but kind of easy to omit and yet makes, I don't know, it makes the whole experience worth it, is to get involved in communities, be it boards or YouTube or whatever. Just get involved. You can, having a load of games that no one sees or that you don't talk about, or kind of hiding them away, I think you're missing out. So there we have it. That's kind of how you could get started, and just getting involved and whatnot, and setting yourself targets. Good way to get going, I think. At least that's how I got going. I could leave it there, but I'll just ramble a little now, so feel free to skip to part 3 if it's up already or whatever. But I'll tell a little tale about the Master System, I suppose, and my collection, and kind of how I decided that the Master System was worth the full collection. Now, I've already said that it had, it was my first system, so I had strong, nostalgic feelings for it and whatnot, and that is a great kind of baseline. But there's a lot of impractical elements to full set collecting. There can be a lot of games you may not want, expensive games, rare games to track down, and so on. So why choose it for this system over another? For me, there was a few things that really impacted that beyond my initial, interest in the system. Number one, the physical medium. Sega games, Mega Drive Masters, and came in nice hard cases, and of course they come on cartridge. Both of these things are very durable, so it makes it a lot easier to pick up nice complete games. That means you have something nice to put on your shelf. It might seem like a silly little thing, but believe me, when you're going through a full set, it actually adds up. So these plastic cases, of all things, are one of the biggest factors of why it's great to have a Sega set. And another point about the Master System set is that by and large, the games are fairly cheap. If you were to look at, say, a Super Nintendo set or maybe an NES set, there's a lot of interest. And they were cardboard based, the prices are even higher. Even common games like Mario can fetch a fair bit of money. You're kind of thinking, that's all millions. In comparison, I picked up this for 99p. It also sold millions. But it's because it's everywhere, you can pick them up for less money. I know this is a Mega Drive and I said massive, but it's the same point. You can just basically get a lot more bargains. It makes the potential for reaching a full set that much more manageable, that much more achievable, really. If it was something like a SNES, I wouldn't have attempted, because the cost of cardboard boxes and the cost of the games in general would just be so high. I just wouldn't have found it worthwhile. Having said that, the cost of games, retro games, is on the rise at the moment, and I'll probably talk about that in the next video. So there we go, it's a segue. End it here, end it. Join me tomorrow and we'll do part 3 shopping. Ooh, we all love a bit of shopping. See you then.